The Great Coalition had stood for centuries, a sprawling alliance of countless species, dedicated to preserving peace in a vital sector of the galaxy. Its fleets patrolled the stars like vigilant guardians, their combined might a symbol of unity and order. But in the shadow of those shining fleets, something dark was stirring. The first attack came without warning. From the depths of uncharted space emerged an enemy unlike any seen before. Silent, swift, and overwhelming, their ships swarmed the Coalition outposts one after another. The advanced defenses, once thought impenetrable, crumbled under the relentless assault. In the command center of the central outpost, alarms blared. As the enemy closed in, Commander Thalia of the Zanari race barked orders to the scattered defenders. But his voice was tinged with disbelief. "We have held here for generations. We cannot fall now." Yet, across the sector, news arrived that shattered hope. One by one, allied races began to abandon their posts. Some fled outright, retreating to their homeworlds. Others chose to surrender, hoping to save their people from annihilation. The Coalition, once a shining beacon, fractured under the pressure of fear and uncertainty. Earth received the distress signal late one evening. The call was urgent, strong with desperation. The last Coalition outpost still holding against the enemies. Advance sent a plea for help. At the United Earth Council chambers, the room buzzed with tension. Holographic images of burning space stations and retreating fleets flickered over the council table. The president's voice was steady, but the worry was clear. This is the gravest crisis humanity has ever faced. To intervene now is to invite war on an interstellar scale. Yet to do nothing would be a betrayal of everything we stand for. Diplomats argued. Some feared the risks, the unknown enemy, the overwhelming odds, the potential cost to humanity. Others called for caution, pointing out Earth's relative isolation and the fragile state of its own defenses. But amid the political maneuvering, a different voice grew louder, a voice of the people. News feeds and social channels were flooded with stories of Coalition soldiers fighting to their last breath, holding the line for civilizations that had turned away. Veterans and civilians alike demanded action, reminding leaders that humanity had never turned its back on those in need. A petition gained millions of signatures in hours. Protesters gathered outside council chambers, chanting for Earth to stand. With the abandoned inside the council, the debate reached a fever pitch. Finally, after hours of deliberation, a unanimous decision was made. Earth would send aid, not as a full-scale war fleet. That was impossible. But a strike force, equipped to reinforce the last outpost, and by time, it was a bold move, one that surprised even the Coalition remnants still fighting. Preparations began swiftly. Engineers worked around the clock, upgrading ships. Pilots trained rigorously, knowing the mission's weight. Scientists analyzed every shred of data on the enemy, seeking a weakness. Among those boarding the flagship Resolute was Captain Ellen Amaris, a veteran with a reputation for unyielding courage and sharp strategy. She glanced at the faces of her crew, a mix of seasoned soldiers, eager volunteers, and scientists ready to adapt on the fly. "We don't know what we're walking into," she said quietly during the final briefing, "but we're going to show the galaxy what humanity stands for. We fight not because it's easy, but because it's right." As the fleet launched into the blackness of space, Earth watched and waited. The choice was made. Now, the question was whether humanity's defiant stand would be enough. Because out there, in the cold silence of space, an enemy awaited, ready to test if humanity truly was willing to fight alone. The Resolute and its escort fleet slipped quietly through the star-speckled void, leaving Earth's atmosphere behind. On board, the atmosphere was tense but resolute. Each member of the crew knew they carried more than just weapons and supplies. They carried hope. Captain Ellen Amar stood on the bridge, her eyes fixed on the stars ahead. The distress call from the last Coalition outpost was still fresh in her mind. The survivors were holding on by a thread, surrounded by enemy forces that seemed endless and merciless. Back on Earth, debates raged over whether this mission was a noble gamble or a reckless act of defiance. Politicians warned of entangling Earth in a war that could spiral beyond control. Intelligence agencies cautioned about the unknown enemy's capabilities. Yet the public's voice had been impossible to ignore. "We can't just sit on the sidelines," a young engineer had told her during a briefing. "If we don't act, who will?" The council's decision to intervene had been a historic moment. It was the first time humanity openly declared it would fight beyond its borders, not for conquest or glory, but to stand with those abandoned by the galaxy. On board, Captain Mars gathered her senior officers in the strategy room. Holographic maps displayed the star systems under siege. Red markers flashing on outposts lost or overwhelmed. Lieutenant Aaron, the fleet's tactical officer, pointed to a cluster of symbols near the last outpost. This is where we're heading outnumbered and isolated. The coalition forces there are exhausted, but they're still fighting. Science officer Dr. Chen tapped her datapad. Our scans show the enemy adapts quickly. They analyze and counter our moves in real time. We can't expect a traditional battle. Elena nodded, which means we need to fight differently. We need to use every advantage, our unpredictability, our creativity. Her voice was steady, but inside, she felt the weight of responsibility settle deeper. The lives of her crew, the hopes of countless others, rested on this mission. The crew worked relentlessly, preparing weapons, running simulations, and rehearsing maneuvers. Engineers retrofitted ships with experimental cloaking devices and electronic warfare suites, hoping to disrupt the enemy's communications. Outside the ship's reinforced windows, stars streaked by as the fleet raced toward the front line. Meanwhile, back on Earth, families and friends watched news feeds anxiously. Public spaces were filled with quiet conversations and prayers. Across the globe, people lit candles in windows, sending silent messages of hope to the brave souls venturing into the unknown. In the cold vacuum of space, the first encounter came sooner than expected. Sensors detected a swarm of enemy fighters, closing in fast machines sleek and dark, designed for speed and precision. The crew braced as the bridge erupted into activity. Enemy contact trains closing. Lieutenant Aaron announced, "Shields up, prepare to engage." The Resolute's captain gave the order, "Hold formation. Use evasive maneuvers and target the lead ships. Remember, we fight smart." The battle was swift and chaotic, unlike the predictable assault waves the enemy expected. The human fleet twisted and turned, using sudden finds and unexpected strikes. Pilots communicated with a mix of calm precision and daring improvisation. Small fighter teams darted through asteroid fields, using debris as cover dot in one intense moment. A pilot named Zara broke formation to save a disabled ally, weaving through enemy fire with skill born of countless hours training. Her actions bought the fleet precious seconds, allowing them to regroup. When the skirmish ended, the enemy withdrew, confused by the humans' unpredictable tactics. Captain Mars allowed herself a brief smile. "We're not just here to hold the line, we're here to change the battle." As the fleet closed in on the outpost, the full scope of devastation became clear. Stations were shattered, supply lines cut, survivors fought with grim determination. But hope flickered. The humans had arrived, and with them, a message. Even when abandoned by all others, humanity would stand and fight alone if they had to. The Resolute descended into the war-torn system with grim determination. Space around the last coalition outpost was littered with the wreckage of fallen ships. The silence between the debris almost deafening. What remained of the coalition forces? Huddled in battered stations and orbiting platforms, their shields flickering and ammo running low. Captain Ellen Amara stood on the bridge, scanning the damaged outpost status reports. The enemy was relentless, already tightening their grip, preparing for another assault that could finish what had begun. "Prepare landing teams," she ordered. "We're not just arriving to hold ground, we're here to push back." On the surface, Lieutenant Zara Kim led a small squad of Marines through the devastated streets of the outposts. Main station. Buildings that once housed bustling alien communities were now shattered ruins. The air was thick with dust and tension. "We lost so many," Zara whispered, checking the wounded they carried. "But we're not done yet." Their mission was clear, secure vital command centers, repair critical systems, and help the coalition survivors hold the line until reinforcements could arrive. But the enemy was waiting. Suddenly, a low hum filled the air. A wave of enemy drones descended, swarming the outpost like angry hornets. Zara's squad took cover, firing back with pulse rifles and makeshift explosives. Despite being outnumbered, the Marines fought with fierce determination. Zara ducked behind a crumbling wall, then lobbed a grenade that scattered the drones. "Keep moving, we need those control nodes operational," she shouted. Meanwhile, aboard the Resolute, Captain Mars coordinated the fleet's defense against incoming attacks. Enemy ships swarmed like shadows, probing for weaknesses. The humans responded with agility and precision, utilizing electronic jamming and rapid-fire cannons to keep the pressure at bay. Back on the ground, communication lines crackled as coalition survivors greeted the humans with a mixture of relief In disbelief, "You came when no one else would," said Commander Thalia, his voice weary but hopeful. "We thought we were finished." Elena's voice came through the comms, steady and inspiring. "We're here to change that. Together. We can hold this line." The battle intensified. Enemy forces unleashed heavy artillery, shaking the ground and lighting the sky with explosions. Yet, humanity's ingenuity shone through. Scientists adapted alien technology on the fly, repairing shields and enhancing weapons with limited resources. Pilots coordinated airstrikes to disrupt enemy supply chains, while ground teams launched daring raids to sabotage enemy command posts. The humans' unconventional tactics confused the enemy. Instead of facing predictable assaults, they encountered unpredictable, coordinated strikes that blurred the lines between offense and defense. Amidst the chaos, stories of heroism emerged. Zara's squad rescued a group of trapped engineers under heavy fire, navigating narrow corridors filled with debris. Captain Mars personally led a critical counterattack to retake a key communications array, rallying troops with her calm resolve. One by one, small victories added up, restoring hope and morale to the battered defenders. But the cost was high. Casualties mounted and exhaustion gnawed at every soldier's spirit. Still, none faltered. As the enemy regrouped for another massive assault, the coalition outpost stood scarred, but unbroken, and humanity's presence was the spark that ignited. Resistance. Captain Mars gathered her crew for a brief moment of respite. "We've taken the first steps," she said. "This fight won't be easy. But we're not just here to survive. We're here to prove that when everyone else abandons hope, humanity stands alone and fights." The crew exchanged determined glances in the cold vastness of space, against impossible odds. A new chapter had begun, the news of humanity's unexpected arrival spread through the remaining coalition worlds like wildfire. Where despair had once filled hearts, flickers of hope now glimmered. The fact that Earth had answered the call even when every other race had turned away, reignited a belief long thought lost. Back on the battered outpost, Captain Elena Mars stood amidst the alien soldiers and scientists, their faces worn, but eager. She knew this fragile hope needed to be nurtured quickly if they were to survive what came next. "We've proven we can hold the line," Elena told Commander Thalia during a strategy briefing. "But this fight isn't over. If we want to push the enemy back, we need more allies and fast." Thalia's eyes reflected both gratitude and a lingering doubt. "Many of our allies have lost faith. Some have sealed their borders or even surrendered. Convincing them to join again will not be easy." Elena nodded. "Then we show them that humanity isn't just here to fight, we're here to unite." In the following days, small transmissions trickled in. Ships from reluctant coalition members cautiously approached the outpost's orbit. They came with supplies, reinforcements, and messages of tentative support. The sight of human fleets fighting shoulder to shoulder with alien warriors inspired those watching from afar. On board the Resolute, the atmosphere was a mix of relief and urgency. Captain Mars and her officers coordinated efforts to repair the outpost's defenses, integrate incoming reinforcements, and plan their next move. The humans' straightforward, determined approach broke down long-standing cultural barriers. Where some alien commanders had been distant or distrustful, the humans' directness and willingness to share both hardship and humor built bonds quickly. Lieutenant Aaron, the fleet's tactical officer, marveled at how their efforts were transforming the coalition's fractured remnants. "We're not just fighting together, we're becoming something new." Outside, the enemy forces tightened their grip, launching probing attacks designed to test the coalition's resolve and expose weaknesses. During one fierce engagement, a coalition cruiser was heavily damaged, its crew stranded and vulnerable. Captain Mars authorized a daring rescue mission led by Zarakim's squad. Navigating through enemy fire, the team extracted survivors, their bravery underscored by the gratitude of those saved. At the same time, scientists and engineers worked feverishly, adapting alien technology with human innovation. Field medics devised new treatments to save wounded soldiers. Communication specialists developed secure channels that allowed for rapid coordination among the diverse coalition forces. As small victories accumulated, the morale of the outpost soared. Alien commanders who had once doubted humanity's commitment now relied on their leadership and tactical insight with renewed strength. The coalition prepared for a bold counterattack. Elena gathered her commanders in the strategy room, the holographic star map glowing with detailed plans. "We strike at their supply lines," she explained. Cutting off their resources will force them to retreat or at least give us breathing room. The plan was risky. It required precision strikes deep into enemy territory, where unknown dangers lurked, but the United Coalition forces were ready before the operation. Elena addressed the assembled troops. We've all faced loss, fear, and abandonment, but now, together, we fight for more than survival. We fight for a future where no one stands alone. The combined fleet launched, weaving through enemy defenses with determination and cunning. Human pilots led daring raids, while alien warriors fought with renewed vigor inspired by their newfound allies. The enemy, caught off guard by the sudden surge of unity and strategy, faltered for the first time in weeks. The coalition forces claimed a clear victory, seizing a vital supply depot and turning the tide in this battered system. Back on the outpost, cheers echoed through corridors and battle stations. The survivors allowed themselves a moment to celebrate, knowing the road ahead was still long. Captain Mars looked to the stars and then to her crew. This is just the beginning. Every race that abandoned us is watching now. We've shown them what humanity means when we say that we fight alone. Soon, they'll see they don't have to. As night fell on the outpost, signals from distant worlds carried a single, growing message: hope. The victory at the enemy supply depot sent ripples through the shattered coalition. For the first time in weeks, hope was no longer a fragile ember, it was a blazing fire. Humanity's leadership and courage had changed the course of a war many had written off. On the Resolute, Captain Ellen Amara studied the updated battle maps with her senior officers. The coalition forces had gained ground, but the enemy still controlled large swaths of space. Their machines and tactics remained deadly and they were unbroken. We can't let them regroup. Elena said firmly, now is when we press the advantage. Strike hard, strike fast. Lieutenant Aaron nodded. We've learned a lot from the last engagements. Our pilots and ground teams have adapted to their style. Science Officer Dr. Chen added, our engineers have integrated alien tech with human systems. We're fielding new weapons and defense systems that increase our effectiveness dramatically. As the fleet prepared for its next offensive, tension ran high. The enemy's response was swift, and brutal waves of ships struck hard at the outpost defenses, testing every line, every shield. While humanity's tactical innovations and fierce resolve kept the coalition forces strong. In one key battle, a squadron of human pilots, led by the daring Zarakim, executed a surprise strike against an enemy command ship. Using stealth technology and unorthodox maneuvers, they disabled the vessel's communications and weapon systems, leaving it vulnerable. Zara's squadron has become a symbol of hope. Captain Mars remarked to her crew, their success shows what happens when we refuse to follow the enemy's rules. Meanwhile, the coalition's alien commanders began to see humanity's strengths, not just their tenacity, but their ability to innovate and adapt in the heat of battle. A tense meeting took place aboard the Resolute when Commander Thalia and other coalition leaders voiced concerns over human commanders challenging long-held hierarchies. Elena addressed the room with respect and clarity. We're not here to replace anyone. We're here because we refuse to lose. If old strategies fail, then we change them. We win together or we fall apart. Her words resonated. The coalition began to embrace a new command structure, one that valued results over tradition, unity over pride. The combined forces launched a series of coordinated strikes on enemy supply lines, communication hubs, and troop concentrations. Using fast, agile ships and guerrilla tactics, the humans and their allies disrupted the enemy's operations. Enemy supply convoys were ambushed, communication scrambled, and forward operating bases neutralized. Across the coalition space, the enemy's momentum faltered. At the same time, human engineers worked tirelessly to retrofit captured enemy technology, turning it against its creators. New weapons systems, shield enhancers, and reconnaissance drones gave the coalition an edge. Yet, despite the victories, the war remained costly. Every gain came with sacrifices, ships lost, brave soldiers fallen, and entire communities uprooted. But the coalition's spirit was unbreakable. Captain Mars stood on the deck of the Resolute, looking out at the stars. She thought of the countless lives hanging in the balance. The future still unwritten. Humanity had stepped into the void when all others fled. They had declared that we fight alone, but now they fought alongside allies united by hope and shared determination. The enemy underestimated us. Elena said quietly to herself, they thought abandoning the fight would break us. Instead, it made us stronger. The tide was turning. The coalition's shattered unity was rebuilding, forged anew by human courage and ingenuity. The galaxy was watching, and for the first time in a long while, the stars seemed to shine with possibility. The coalition's renewed strength was undeniable. United under humanity's bold leadership, their forces had reclaimed key territories and forced the enemy into retreat. Yet, amid the victories, darker challenges began to surface, challenges that could threaten everything they had fought for. Captain Elena Mars sat in the strategy room aboard the Resolute, reviewing encrypted reports that hinted at troubling, e.g., communications from some coalition worlds had gone silent. Intelligence suggested that factions within the coalition were considering separate peace talks with the enemy. Commander Thaler entered, his face grim. We've known that not all allies share the same resolve. Some see our alliance as a dead end and are looking for a way out. Elena sighed. We can't afford fractures now. The enemy would exploit any weakness. The reality was stark. Years of political maneuvering, cultural differences, and old rivalries had left scars deeper than the war itself. For some, the desperation to survive outweighed loyalty. To counter this, the human-led coalition intensified efforts to build trust and communication. Delegations traveled between worlds, sharing stories of sacrifice and hope. Public broadcasts showcased the victories and the unity that had rekindled, but whispers of betrayal grew louder. On the Resolute, Lieutenant Aaron uncovered a coded message embedded in enemy transmissions, one that hinted at a coalition insider passing strategic information to the enemy. This could explain the sudden enemy ambushes and supply losses, Aaron reported during a tense meeting. Elena's jaw tightened. We need to find the traitor before more lives are lost. As suspicion and paranoia took root, morale wavered. Officers questioned each other, alliances were tested, and trust became a precious commodity. Meanwhile, Zara Kim led covert reconnaissance missions, gathering intelligence on enemy movements. Her squad operated behind enemy lines, risking everything to gain the advantage. During one mission, Zara's team encountered a hidden base that revealed shocking evidence. The enemy was not just a brutal force, they were orchestrating psychological warfare designed to fracture the coalition from within. Zara relayed the information to Captain Morris. They're playing us, using fear and doubt as weapons. Elena knew the fight was no longer just physical. Winning the war meant winning the hearts and minds of the coalition and rooting out the poison within. Determined to confront the threat, Elena authorized a covert investigation led by trusted operatives. They infiltrated coalition command centers and scrutinized communications, searching for the traitor. The breakthrough came unexpectedly. A respected coalition officer, once thought loyal, was discovered exchanging intelligence with the enemy. Their motivations were complicated, a desperate attempt to protect their homeworld from destruction. By bargaining for peace. Confronted, the officer confessed, revealing the fear and hopelessness that had driven them. Elena faced a difficult choice: punish the betrayal and risk further division, or offer a path to redemption that could strengthen the fragile alliance. After a long council meeting, a decision was made. The officer would be stripped of command, but allowed to serve in a critical support role, demonstrating that humanity's leadership valued justice tempered with understanding. The message was clear: unity requires strength, but also compassion. With the traitor exposed, coalition morale began to recover. The knowledge that even in the darkest moments, they could confront internal threats and emerge stronger renewed the alliance's spirit. Captain Mars addressed the fleet. This war tests not only our strength, but our character. We stand together not just against the enemy, but against the fear and doubt they sow. We fight because we believe in each other. As the fleet prepared for the next phase of the campaign, the shadows of betrayal had been pushed back, though never fully vanished. In the vast expanse of space, trust remained their most precious weapon. The coalition fleet gathered near the edge of the contested system, their combined ships forming a formidable wall against the advancing enemy. The scars of war marked every vessel, but none more so than the Resolute, Captain Elena Morris's flagship, still bearing the battle-worn insignias of 1,000 skirmishes. The enemy had grown desperate. Intelligence suggested their next move was a bold, all-out assault aimed at crushing the coalition once and for all. It was a gamble humanity and its allies had to meet head-on. On the bridge of the Resolute, Elena stood before her officers, eyes sharp with resolve. This is the moment everything we fought for leads to. We either break their will now or risk losing everything. Lieutenant Aaron studied the star map projected before them. Our scouts report the enemy fleet is amassing faster than expected. They're planning a coordinated strike using heavy artillery and electronic jamming. Science Officer Dr. Chen added, "We've developed countermeasures, but this will push our technology to the limit." Captain Mars nodded. That we push harder. The plan was audacious. Rather than waiting defensively, the coalition would split their forces. One fleet would engage directly, drawing enemy fire and distracting their command. The other, led by Zara Kim's elite squadron, would infiltrate the enemy's rear lines. Aiming to disable their flagship and sever communications, Zara stood ready. Her squadron assembled in sleek fighters, engines humming with quiet determination. "We've trained for this," she told her pilots. "Remember, we're not just fighting for ourselves. We're fighting for everyone who believed when everyone else turned away." As the fleets moved into position, tension crackled like static. In the air, moments before battle, Elena allowed herself a brief thought of Earth, of home, family, and the promise they had all made. Then the silence shattered. The enemy fleet surged forward like a storm, firing barrages of plasma and missiles that lit the void with deadly bursts. Shields shimmered and faltered. Explosions rocked ships. The coalition's frontline fleet met the assault with unwavering force, weaving through enemy fire, retaliating with precision strikes. The battle was a chaotic dance of light and shadow, survival and sacrifice. In the midst of the chaos, Zara and her squadron slipped through narrow gaps, evading patrols and electronic countermeasures. Their target, the enemy flagship, a massive warship bristling with weapons and guarded by elite fighters. As they approached, electronic interference jammed their communications. Zara's voice cut through the static. "Stay focused. We're close." A sudden wave of enemy fighters intercepted them, and the skies erupted into a fierce dogfight. Zara's pilots twisted and turned, dodging laser fire, unleashing volleys with surgical precision. Despite heavy losses, the squadron pushed forward. Zara led the charge, breaking through the enemy's defenses and locking onto the flagship's power core. "Prepare to deploy imp charges," she ordered. With moments to spare, the charges detonated, sending a pulse through the enemy's ships. Systems, lights flickered, weapons powered down. The flagship was crippled. At the same time, the main coalition fleet pressed their attack. Enemy ships, now cut off from command, faltered and retreated. Captain Morris watched the enemy flagships fall on the display. "This is it," she said softly, "the turning point." As the remaining enemy vessels fled, the coalition erupted in cautious cheers. The victory was decisive, but hard-won. Countless ships had been lost, many brave souls sacrificed. Yet, hope burned brighter than ever. After the battle, Elena addressed her crew and allies. "We stood when no one else would. We fought when others fled. This victory belongs to every soul who refused to give up." The coalition leaders convened to discuss the war's next chapter. For the first time, talk turned toward rebuilding, not just surviving, but forging a future where no race would be abandoned again. Elena knew the road ahead remained uncertain. Old wounds needed healing, trust had to be rebuilt, and vigilance never waned. But in that moment, beneath the vast canvas of stars, humanity and its allies had proven something greater than technology or strategy. They had proven the power of unity, born from courage, and that when abandoned, humans could rise alone and lead many to victory. The battlefield had quieted, the echoes of war fading into the cold silence of space. The enemy fleet, shattered and broken, retreated into the dark reaches of the galaxy. Their threat diminished for now. On board the Resolute, Captain Elena Mars stood on the bridge, gazing out at the stars. The price of victory weighed heavily. On her, ships were lost, brave soldiers fallen, and countless worlds scarred by war. But amidst the devastation, something rare and precious had been forged: unity. The coalition leaders gathered for what felt like a new beginning. Around a holographic table, representatives from the once fractured races now spoke as allies, their voices carrying hope and resolve. Commander Thaler looked at Elena, gratitude and respect in his eyes. "Without humanity, this war might have ended long ago. You reminded us that when all others abandon hope, courage can still light the way." Elena nodded, feeling the weight of those words. "We fought alone at first because no one else would, but we never meant to stand alone forever. This victory belongs to all of us." The council began plans to rebuild shattered alliances, repair devastated planets, and established new defenses to guard against future threats. For the first time in decades, hope felt tangible. Back on Earth, news of the Coalition's success inspired a wave of pride and determination. Humanity had answered a call that others ignored, stepping into the void. When abandonment seemed certain, Elena thought of the countless faces she'd seen, the weary Marines, the alien scientists, the leaders who had doubted but now believed. Each had played a role in this story. In the quiet moments after battle, the crew of the Resolute reflected on their journey, bonds forged in fire, friendships born across cultures, and a shared belief in something greater than themselves. Lieutenant Sarah Kim stood beside Elena on the bridge. We proved something important, that strength isn't just in weapons or numbers. It's in standing together when it matters most. Elena smiled, and when others walked away, we said that we fight alone, but it was never truly alone. It was with every soul who refused to give up. The galaxy was far from healed. Challenges remained, and new threats would surely rise. But the Coalition, reborn from ashes, was ready. As the Resolute charted a course for the next mission, Elena allowed herself a moment of quiet hope. A new dawn was rising, a dawn born from the courage of one species who dared to stand when everyone else fled. And in that dawn, humanity found its greatest strength not in standing alone, but in leading many.